Hello world, welcome to the Migs Machine. Today is episode 2 of dWeb Chats with Migs. I connect with Rob, one of the original founders of Shakestats. Shakestats is one of the first websites where you could find statistical information on the Handshake blockchain. Although the website is currently down, Rob is looking forward to connect with some developers and get it back up and running in the near future. We connect on the history of Handshake and we talk about our predictions of the future of Handshake. I hope you enjoyed this video.
3, 2, 1, fire!
Hello world, welcome to the Migs Machine. I'm here with Rob from Shakestats, and we are going to be talking about Handshake, kind of the history of it, what we've seen, developments, where we think things are going. So first of all, Rob, welcome. You are in Australia. I am on the west coast of the United States, so this took a little bit of coordination. I appreciate you working with me on it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on, man. I'm excited to talk.
So the reason I reached out originally was because I remember your Shakestats website was like one of the first ones, kind of like first independent, completely separate from kind of like the nucleus of Handshake, doing something kind of cool. What was the plan? I know right now we're kind of down for a little bit. We're working to get some engineers on our side. Hopefully the community will help with that. But what was the vision? What was like the project?
All right. Yeah, interesting you say that. So initially, I'll just say how we found out about Handshake and the ideas that popped in my head. So initially found out about Handshake from Gotham getting the developer airdrop. So he had like enough followers on GitHub, right? And he got like that FOSS airdrop. And from there, he just mentioned to me about Handshake. And I thought it was like crazy when I heard that you can own a website, then just have the TLD there. You don't need like a subdomain or whatever. You can just purely have a TLD. I thought that was nuts. Like I didn't know anything about tech, anything about domain names. I know a bit more now, but I'm still not, up to speed. But yeah, that blew my mind. And I got so interested, and I was there in the beginning with all the, when all the names started releasing, because I don't know if everyone knows this, but the names in the beginning were releasing periodically. So I don't know exactly how it was set out. Maybe it wasn't alphabetically. I think it was just random. There would be like 2 weeks until reveal for like a certain batch of names, and they would keep doing that until all names were released in around, let's say March 2020 or April. I may be wrong, something like that. Anyways, so I saw people started like going hard on trading names and things like that, and like being pretty weird with their pricing. And I was from there, I was like wondering, where can I find like, stats for this sort of stuff? Like, how can I know like what's the true value of this name? Like it all seems so random right now. And that's exactly why we created Shakestats. We're like, oh, look, we can make a platform for everyone just to have context on the value and the usability of a name, right? So yeah, we created that, and we thought it would be helpful for people for trading purposes, and for SLDs down the line. And we thought it would be good for us also to make some good trades, to have like the database on our hands. So
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think so. I came in a little bit later. I wasn't there on the releases, but I do remember that there was a tiered release, right? So like if a name, so there were certain names that people would look for, and you couldn't bid on them. You couldn't open the auction. You had to wait until a specific date where the blockchain even made it an option, right? Like more or less. And it was hard to find stats. Plus, at the same time, I think a lot of people are early on and they're like, is this even legit? Like, what am I even bidding on, right? Like, why can't I find stats on this like obscure blockchain thing for sure? So, okay, cool. So that makes a lot of sense. So you're probably doing most of this on Namebase, right?
Yeah, all on Namebase. I didn't even like know what Bob Wallet was.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so I thought the same thing about TLDs, but I don't know about you. When I like try to like talk to people about Handshake, like they don't get as excited as I do about just the fact that it's like a TLD. Is there something specific that you think makes you like stoked about TLDs? Like, were you into like trading cards? Is it like something like that? Like, what was it?
Yeah, funny you ask. Since I was like, I don't know, 14, I was like kind of a hustler. I would just sell whatever I have on like Facebook Marketplace or like Gumtree and things like that, try to make a profit. And well, it started with me just selling stuff to like that I didn't need and getting money. But then I started like flipping. I started getting into shoe reselling a lot. That was a big thing. And that was kind of a catalyst to me. Like, it was natural for me just to see TLDs and like wanting to flip them. It's like, I don't know. It's just such similar mechanics in all these trading things. Like, same with NFTs, right? You figure out what's valuable in the context of the market, how much supply there is of that, like the rarity. A lot of the time you just need to be in the market to understand the rarity and value of a certain thing, right?
How many stats like you have on it?
Yeah, even without stats, if you're just in the midst of it, I feel like you get some good intuition. And I sort of I got that from like shoe reselling, I guess, and then like put it into TLDs. Like, that's where I got like that single emoji and like resold that and started doing some IDN flipping. But yeah,
nice.
That's
dope. I'm a fan of the emojis too, so we got to talk about that. Okay, yeah. So that's interesting because I think I have it's similar, right? Because crypto, specifically NFTs, more specifically top level domains, right? They fall in this niche category where they're rare. They're definitely flippable, but they're also I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to know the potential of what they can have, and the more you get in the space, you start differentiating the values. That's for sure. But yet crypto also has that. So it's the tech, but it also has that whole financial side of it. So the tokenomics and the scarcity. So it's why it's open, right? You and I don't particularly like code, but we understand that this thing is a one of a kind, right? And therefore it's going to be valuable. Which leads to emojis, because when we look at TLDs or just URLs like domains, this isn't the first round, right? We had like the 90s, right? And people got really excited about domains. There was a big bubble of like over them, right? But now the difference is we're not just dealing with words, right? And we're also not just dealing with English words, right? And so it's much more expanded, but I think that the emojis are going to be huge. Like, I think they're just going to continue to be huge. Like, they're not going to stop. I interviewed Tayshan on the channel. That was the first video I ever did. And the way he put it, he was like, yeah, I think they're going to have staying power for sure. And I'm like, I think that's a casual way of saying like these things are just going to be, I don't know. I think every brand will have their own. But what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you 100%. It's like I compare the emojis to punks in a way, right? So punks like were the original like, you know, cool NFT to have, and they're just always gonna like grow in value. It's one of those things, like it's just never gonna stop. It's like a lot of NFT projects, for example, have become irrelevant, things like that. Same way, I think a lot of like, I don't know, emoji combos and things like that won't be that important, but single emojis, they're just going to keep going up and up and up and up. They're not going to stop. They're just so rare. And it's like the first of its kind, right? So you've never had a situation where you could have a website just with one singular emoji. So you could say, oh yeah, look, on DNS, like you can have an emoji.com or something. Like, I didn't even know that prior to like a few months ago, but I found that out. And it just it's just not the same. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, it's just so cool just to type one emoji. There you go, website. And ENS doesn't have it, right? They have a 3-character minimum limit. So you can have like 3 emojis, I'm pretty sure, and it's .eth, but yeah. So it's just so unique, and it's like an NFT in itself, and it can have utility, because I see more and more emojis being used instead of words. Like, people can get the sort of gist of what you're talking about if you're just using emojis a lot of time. So that might keep going in this direction, and
yeah, no, so I see it in all the different angles. I think about the punks were the originals, right? So that's why they're going to be there, but their characteristics are mostly that it's a really simple image. Like, people I think people like the mind mocks it when it sees it, right? Because it's so like you could see it from so far away. It's so pixelated, right? That's kind of like the idea. I think the emojis are the same thing, but the difference is that they were around way before, right? They actually have like an acknowledgement. So it's wild, and people are using it all the time. Every other email I get in my inbox is going to have an emoji in the subject or in the email, like. So I agree, and yeah, the singles it's ridiculous. I haven't even seen one go for a while. Like they're easily in the tens of thousands at this point.
I'm pretty sure a few people have just like collected most of them. I remember when I sold mine, I kind of regret it now, I ain't gonna lie, but when I sold mine, there was a lot of people getting similar offers at the exact same time, and I have an inkling that it was like someone collecting. You see that quite a lot in Handshake actually. And I wanted to touch on, again, that how emojis, as you said, how emojis have been around more than punks, right? So they're iconic, right? And I feel like on Handshake, it's the only way people feel like they really own the emoji. Like, let's say people, you know how people make NFTs of like old viral videos or something, right? And they say, oh yeah, I own this viral video, da da da. But like, I don't know, it's just kind of like a contract saying that you haven't done all that stuff. But when you have an emoji, you can use it as a website and people can actually be directed to that. It can be a username. It actually has utility. It seems more so that you actually own the emoji. And if Handshake becomes the one chain everyone uses for like identity purposes, wallets, websites, I wouldn't be surprised if these emojis can go for like upwards of 50 million one day or something. I sound crazy, but like honestly.
It's so that's what's interesting about Handshake. So we're gonna segue into that in a second. Like, people are like, I have internet real estate on so and so platform. I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, your chain, right, marks your relevance, right? And so if that team, which inevitably most of the time is a centralized team with the best of intentions and a strong marketing platform, right, is successful, then maybe what you bought will matter. Maybe, right? But you have to look at what makes it relevant. That's where Handshake blows my mind, because it bridges web and blockchain. Like, the only reason, when my favorite blockchain projects now, which were ideas before and now you're starting to see them come out, are using blockchain for like a requirement. Like, it was already a great idea, and it's like, okay, we need a blockchain. I don't know if you're familiar with DVPN, right? But it's like, let's make an incentivized, right, Tor network. Makes sense. We need nodes. We need to get people paid to make sure that there's enough nodes, right? Moving on. And so that makes sense. Handshake does the same thing. But Handshake, like, people are constantly harping on if they can use it. Like, am I able to resolve my name? I'm like, yeah. But I have to change some settings. I'm like, yeah, you can pick up any device on the planet, make basic settings that took me, like, I timed it like 35 seconds, right? And now you're interacting with a blockchain network, which is also a naming protocol. Like, and I'm like, that value is immediate and universal. Like, it can run on a light client, meaning like your phone can access it. And I don't know how people in crypto that understand NFT properties don't look at it like 4 times over. Like, these should already be winning. Like, because you access it. Like, how do you typically access Handshake names?
Well, I was using HNS.2. I was just kind of lazy, but now that I think that bridge doesn't work anymore, and I don't know if I tried Puma browser. That was running off HNS.2 as well. I didn't really actually put in the effort to download a proper browser or download the light client yet, but I actually should, because it's mad if you think about that. That's just the open decentralized web. Like, nothing can stop you, you know? That's just like,
I tried to. The analogy that worked for me was, I was like, what if you just dialed, like in the States, you dial a phone number, it's 9 digits. I'm like, what if you just dialed 5? Right? Like, that's essentially that. Like, imagine if you just had a bunch of 5-digit phone numbers, you dialed those, like, it's right there. Same phone, same dial tone, same thing, right? Which makes it really, really wild. All right, so we have the emojis. We're both pretty freaking bullish on them. Which one did you sell, by the way? Which one did you have?
Sad face emoji.
No way. Bro, that's such a good one. All right. And
I
then
was so lucky.
yeah. So how did you? So the fact that you were there, what were like the funny trends? What stuck out from you from like the Genesis when people started?
Well, what was funny to me was like all these names going for crazy high H&S, and like the bidding volume was insane because the supply was a lot low, was constrained because they weren't all released yet.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, Hub, I was like going hard like for that name, and yeah, I just got whooped in that in that bidding war. Like I was nothing, and I was like, man, how am I ever gonna get a name? Yeah, that kind of stood out to me. All the craze in the beginning. I don't know. I can't really think of much else. Also, like a bit later on than the start, people going hard on like you remember when people were doing like 4 emojis at once? What's it called? Like they were doing like 4 emojis, right, of the same thing, and I just found it so stupid. They were all selling for like so high.
Yeah.
Right, and they have like no utility. And they just look kind of weird. I don't know. It doesn't look cool to me. Like they had like 4 hammers, and then it went for like 10,000 H&S when other names were going for that was way better. Were going for less.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, well, like in the beginning and still now, like all the irrational pricing just like keeps surprising me, and making me laugh.
Yeah, so it does, and you have to like wonder, right, what's going on behind the scenes sometimes, for sure, because if it's like on name based, it's like really hard to track. But yeah, there is some definitely some irrational pricing. But then you also run the other scenario where you're like, damn, it's now or never, right? Like at least it's for sale. Like I could buy it, like because there's a lot of them where you're just not gonna get. Like it's not happening. It's pretty ruthless. It's definitely pretty ruthless, and the pricing doesn't make any sense. When did you have a moment? It sounds like you went all in on the names. I remember because I just had a bunch of H&S. Somebody was like, hey, this is a project, I think it's going to go well, and people were arguing about the price action of the token, which has been flat and boring despite the deflationary aspect of it. What were your thoughts on it, or have they evolved? What do you think about the token itself, like in the halving cycle and all that?
Well, I think the token itself is going to be insane. It's just like people are going to think I'm stupid for saying this, or like, I don't know, say I'm lying, but I feel like it's like the only 100x I really see out here in the next couple of years. That's pretty obvious to me. Like the tokenomics behind it are extremely bullish, right? Mm-hmm. Like the design of it is just beautiful. Like the incentives they put in place for developers to come in and actually hold the token, along with the burning and the halving cycle, mm-hmm. is just perfect for long-term investments. And it really reminds me of Bitcoin, right? And plus the fact that there's utility in actually having the token, you can use it to buy names, and that's the only way you can really buy names. Later on, I guess people will like enable ways on the secondary market to buy like through ENS or Ethereum or something. But, yeah. That in itself is just crazy. Like the fact that all the money on the primary market gets burnt is huge. It's just all bullish for me. Like I've never seen something so well constructed in regards to tokenomics.
Yeah, so I felt, so early on I said this is going to be very, very valuable, but it's going to be around for a while, and the names won't be. So let's go ahead and lock up some of these tokens and names, essentially, was the goal. But then I agree with you. The tokenomics make a lot of sense, and then the utility of it, it's a funny project, because all you can do is buy names, and you go, well, okay, who cares? But it's not, I think you probably have already like analyzed this. Like Handshake doesn't have a way to really bootstrap its way onto exchanges, right? It's not getting spread out all over the place. It doesn't have a huge marketing campaign, right? And so for those reasons, it only has like one purpose. People will speculate on it, and then they'll find liquidity pools for it, right? It'll participate in DeFi, it'll get wrapped and all that crap. But eventually, someone's gonna need to buy names, and the chain doesn't accept other currency. So it's gonna be interesting, and a lot of it's gonna get burned and locked up, right? And so I think I think once the acquisition starts, it'll get aggressive.
Yeah. It's gonna be, the price action is gonna be flat for a long time, and we'll just have one inflection point. It's never gonna go back. That's my feeling. It's just so many parallels to Bitcoin, honestly. People like Bitcoin, people just sleeping on it, right? Like they had some like knowledge, like I guess if you were on the dark web or something, or you had a few like mates that were engineers, like it came to your mind, but you didn't really think anything of it. That's where all the best investments start. It starts with understanding the philosophy behind it, and understanding not only technological shifts, but social shifts in the world also. Like Handshake, the big idea behind Handshake isn't just in the fact that you can have like a singular TLD and like that the websites are more secure and things like that. It's really an exit to for all these people under censorship regimes, right? For example, like in Russia, like people are going to start getting it's going to start being hard for them to access websites and things like that on the current DNS system. And in China, like the big ass firewall and things of that nature. And I remember in Iran at one point, they couldn't access like websites. It's more of a philosophical thing. Like you realize where the world is heading, and you try to act on that. You know what I mean? And that's what people in early Bitcoin realized. Like the world is going into the financial system's like so messed up after what happened in 2008. And they really believed that there needed to be a radical change, and that's who made the big bucks right there.
Yeah, no, so couldn't agree with you more. So part of why do I love Handshake? I see a lot of the properties of Bitcoin. Why do I love Bitcoin? Well, aside from it being very fair, I think that its value accrues as the world continues behaving the way it has, right? Like it's so drawing parallels to what's going on right now in the Ukraine and Russia. Like this is that people why. So a year ago I talked to you about Handshake. I don't care about Handshake. Okay, no worries, right? This happens. All of a sudden, like you expose fragile infrastructure, right, and its vulnerabilities, and you need something to fill it. So it's filled. It gets filled with something like Handshake, right? Maybe it's the first iteration, but the next time, no one's like wondering anymore. It's going to happen immediately. Kind of like, right, like Bitcoin has been used for donations in the past, right? But never like was there such like a global cause. So now when it needed to happen, right? It immediately took the front stage, right, for moving a bunch of money overnight, literally, right, which was bananas, because we've seen lack of other infrastructure when it comes to moving money in the past, especially when there's a whole war going on. So it is wild as censorship happens. That's way more. I love the emojis. I think that's going to make a lot of sense. The biggest thing with the emojis is I can't believe that other people aren't already on it. But when it comes to the other stuff, like that's going to be necessary. The access, the firewalls, no doubt about it. Also, just people wanting to own like their own ecosystem, like SLDs. I think we have to look at TLDs and SLDs completely differently than the DNS system. Like now, owning one could be that you want to own one that you share with the world. It could also just be that you want to own a club with private usernames, excluding kind of the world in a sense, right? Like it could just be like that too. So it's a whole different. It's like really like give me my own autonomy within the namespace. It's wild.
Yeah, no, it is wild. There's such a diverse group of people in Handshake, and it'll only become more diverse, and it'll be so interesting to see the actual use cases behind them. But definitely creating like clubs and things like that would be a huge thing. I know a few people like owning Discord servers like that have TLDs and are selling off SLDs. they want to start making communities surrounding their TLD, and you need an SLD to be a part of the club and things like that. I think that's a really cool way moving forward, and there'll be more of that.
Yeah, no, like the name or news feature, right? No password. Like it just makes a ton of sense for me. You have Celebrity A will give exclusive access, right? And if you have access, you're in the club, right? Like I think it's the evolution of like I was really into like punk rock and bands, and like you had to have the band T-shirt. Like I got the handshake sweatshirt. I'm like you got to be like whatever your like association is going to be, and so NFTs are obviously that. It's a miracle to see like how far they went on their own. Complete speculation with the pictures, but now once you can start drawing brands and a lot of like history to associate with that top central brand, it's going to be wild. It's also I put myself in the position of a creator these days, and I go, this is the best time we've ever lived in for creators. You can monetize your content. You have so many platforms. All those platforms are fighting for your attention so that you will put your content of you making a steak or whatever, right, like on their platform. That's all they care about. But at the same time, so many platforms. Like it's exhausting. It doesn't matter what you run, right? You could be a model, could be a fitness person. You need like 14 different types of passwords. They all got their own rules on how you're allowed to monetize, what type of content you're allowed to post. You might get deplatformed on one, lose your entire brand, right? Like everyone has backups. So I also just wonder how long until content creators start taking their own, like, essentially cutting out agents, cutting out middlemen. See, I think that might be an interesting evolution of it, maybe more short term.
Yeah, it will. And how you said like people getting banned on platforms and things like that, that'll cause. It's already caused a major shift. Like people are starting to like put all their content on their own websites and like Patreon and things like that. What they don't realize is those places are centralized too, and eventually they can get kicked off also. And Handshake and the dWeb infrastructure is going to tackle that and can actually help them. And if we, this is like a random idea right now, but if we really target to those demographics of people getting censored and people who are wanting to like go on their own platforms rather than rely on all these that have been created, I feel like that's how we can really blow Handshake up. Target the people who have been targeted themselves. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like the people who've really been affected by centralization.
Yeah, I think that's going to naturally that's what's going to happen. People that get marginalized by the current successful system are going to evolve to the next one. Whoever flocked to the internet to put their store online, right, was called more than crazy. Like you're gonna accept money over the internet. Like good luck. Well, it's because they couldn't afford Main Street anymore. They had to find like some alternative, right? And they're gonna make it work, even if it requires a resolver, for a few months or whatever it might be. But I think it's that, and then I think it's going to be a FOMO when it happens again, quick. I think we're in agreement that when it happens, it'll be fast, because why would Opera integrate Handshake, right? Like you start to see, you start to feel like it could happen. Why? Nothing happens in this space. I've been around long enough in this space, and nothing happens unless someone's either really bullish to take an opportunity over, or they're really fearful that they're going to get taken over. That's the only reason anyone does anything around here. So I'm like, why is Opera doing this? And what's the motivation, right? I don't know. It could be
thing,
yeah. I don't know.
That Opera thing is absolutely huge. Like I think they have more users than Brave, don't they? Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like 200 million users?
It's in the top 4 browsers. It has to be.
Yeah.
Like universally. Yeah, because it came standard for a while on something. Like it had like its day. Opera was really big in the in the mid-teens. I mean, it's always been big, but I don't think it ships naturally like on hardware that often anymore. But yeah, I think when it becomes available there, I mean, it'll just be easier because people are loyal to their browsers. But yeah, I'm like waiting to find out who's going to be the first person who's going to put their whole brand like on a TLD, or what huge brand's going to come and adopt their names. I haven't seen that many claim their names recently, but
yeah, once a few people do it, it's going to snowball. As like we talked about NFTs before, but I'll add on to this. Remember how much NFTs blew up just from a few celebrities joining in? I can't remember who were the first ones, but it started with a few, and then it just went insane. Like, the reason is because they realize they can influence the prices themselves. And if they talk to their friends who are also rich and have influence, they're like, all right, guys, let's start this and let's actually get into it, and we can pump each other's bags. And from that initial incentive, that's where everything's gonna blow. Same thing with NFTs. It's so similar.
But what's a trip about Handshake and what makes it dangerous, the reason I know it's a ripcord, right, is because you're competing with the world. Like, you're competing with the trend itself. It's not just the top football player calling the top basketball player and they're like, listen, you're going to do it next week. We're going to build on this, right? And pump our bags. It's like, if I don't buy this thing, I could be competing with an oligarch from a continent away, right? Who is just never giving me back the sad face emoji, unfortunately. For example. Just kidding. I've let go of some I regret too. I let go of one that for, I think, like $19, and I think it went for $21,000 not too long later.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I won't talk about it. It was a bad day.
That's your Bitcoin pizza moment, right?
Yes, that was my Bitcoin pizza moment, and I'm like, it'll come around. It has not. It has not. But you win some, you lose some for sure. So all right, so that's what I think. So I think in premise, I think TLDs are a massive thing you can own. The properties of them are amazing. The infrastructure, in terms of it being decentralized, I agree with you. It couldn't have been architected better. I do have doubts. I haven't looked into it in a while, but the mining pool did seem a bit centralized a while ago. Like, it just didn't seem like it was as spread out as it could be. But I have to feel like this is purely a bottleneck, because every time I get concerned about Handshake like this, it like proves me wrong so much. But I feel like it has to have something to do with access to mining rigs right now. But if it becomes, maybe after the first halving cycle, we'll see the mining get more competitive, right? And see where it goes. But you have it decentralized, you have the TLDs, you have access, like no need for a password. You can sign contracts. I haven't been able to find I think it's much better than ENS personally, and yeah, it's not in the conversation, so I just don't know. I don't know.
Just put my charges here, but you're so right. Handshake has no competition. Like, oh shit, sorry.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Handshake has literally no competition. And the recent news in ENS just proves that, right? Like, how are you going to kick someone out just for like some personal beliefs when you say you're a decentralized protocol? Like, I get you can be mad. Like, obviously everyone has different opinions. But how do you claim to be decentralized and open and do exact same thing as Web 2? That can't happen on Handshake, right? We don't have like a DAO that has like all the funds and has controls the root zone, and we don't control how many control the root zone. No one's like adding more TLDs themselves or like controlling the limit of TLDs, things of that nature, like all the time. Like, it was hard coded in the beginning, and it's just like playing out how it is. I don't know. You just don't see that with ENS. Obviously, any other naming service is pretty similar, and other naming services aren't even on par, so there's no point talking about them, like, I don't know, like Unstoppable or Yap. So yeah, Handshake's the clear winner. And if something like, and I was thinking to myself, what if something else comes up that's like better than Handshake? I can't really think of anything. Like, it achieves what it achieves, and we already have built the network effect and a really good community, and it's only going to keep going this way. And we have so many TLDs already on the market on primary, like good secondary volume. It'd be probably impossible to create something better. I sound like such a shill right now.
No. So we've thought about it a lot, because I've thought about it a lot as well. The best arguments I've ever heard were that the airdrop could have been done better, right, and something else could have been done better. And my argument was always, well, make it, because this person was arguing that they were going to make it. I was like, you better make it quick, because you can point out as many flaws as you'd like, and you can point out a lot of flaws with Bitcoin, but it has this property where it's it's not asking for permission. Like it's very like so it will continue to be around, right? Like cycles will happen, but the blockchain doesn't really stop. Like every 10 minutes it's there, right? And it doesn't, with like a certain proof of stake chains, you could see like validators lose interest, the incentives die off, right? Like certain things die. But as long as the mining keeps happening and the coins keeping up for sale, right, and being highly undiscovered by most of the crypto world, like yes, it's not going in a backwards direction. Is the root zone going to be replaced? I think so. Of course it is, right? Like just like the dollar is going to lose to Bitcoin one day. Like the properties of this other alternative are just far superior and fair. Like it's going to be unfair. You're not going to be able to get the smiley face emoji. Tough cookies, right? But if you find another, within whatever the market's offering that you want, or maybe you can afford the smiley emoji, right? So then you go and you buy it, right? But it'll be like a free market. It's not like I can saying maybe, kind of, sort of, right? And then you got some broker capitalizing on top of that. So I think it'll get replaced. But even if it doesn't get replaced, there's a world within gaming or millions of identity things. I mean, whatever, like, I don't know, memberships, annual memberships to anything could be on Handshake names. So I agree with you. In terms of the future, though, I do think that it's going to be, the next steps are all going to be about the kind of the full stack, right? Because it doesn't help you if you're in a country that's not allowing you to access DNS, then maybe you can access it. But if you're somebody trying to provide content to the person who's trying to access DNS, right, and you're using AWS or some alternative, then you're in trouble, right? So Akash is just going to be as important. It looks like Sai is the preferred decentralized storage platform kind of for Handshake. It seems to be like there's a lot of partnerships. And then DVPN is making major strides, which is cool. I'm going to make a video on that soon, which I think is really cool because it combines with Cosmos. I don't know how familiar you are.
Yeah, I'm in Cosmos too,
yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool. I think Handshake on Cosmos would be dope, but...
I think, I don't know the technicalities obviously, but I know Chango, she's like a big investor in Handshake and helps around with the dWeb Foundation, things like that. And I think she mentioned it, and she might talk to like the Tendermint team and see if there can be like a collaboration there. I don't know exactly how it can happen from a technical standpoint, but it seems that we have the right people for that to happen.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's funny about Handshake. We won't go so into it because I think people can just hop on crypto Twitter. But like, they're all really nice people. But like, I would fear the Handshake people if they had bad intentions. Like these people are smart, like they are freaking smart, and then like I said, they're all friendly. I don't mean that anyone should be fearing Chango. She's awesome, but yeah, I've heard her in her interviews. I mean, and she's precise. She's got it down. From what my understanding, it's bridging, right? You're trying to bridge a proof of work chain with that consensus mechanism to a proof of stake, right? But Cosmos is kind of like the interoperable world. So I guess if there's some sort of bridge that would allow for the two chains to communicate, I think it's finality. I believe that's what they're trying to do. If they can do that, then they would be able to, and I don't see why people wouldn't be all over it. Like I think I was in a Twitter Spaces for Cosmos the other day, and two things happened in it, but one was that I was like, the overlap is bananas, right? The way that people think in the two communities, it's really funny that there's overlap. And the other thing was that I had a Cosmos guy, and no offense to him, I'm sure he was cool, but he was clearly just like a liquidity, chaser, right? And he's like, oh man, so like I can't access like this name, damn, like maybe you guys will get there one day. And I was like, no offense, but like the whole reason that it matters is because you can't access it right now. I'm like, can you get your crypto hat on? And he was like, oh yeah. And then like it clicked for him. I'm like, yeah, Cosmos people are gonna love Handshake one day when that bridge happens.
Oh yeah, if like some bridge happens and we can start getting Handshake on Osmosis and other like Cosmos dexes. Like there's so many new dexes on Cosmos I'm not even familiar with. We can actually get liquidity on the protocol. We can actually get some people investing because they want to LP and because they want to trade. That's what's missing here, right? The fact that we're solo on our own chain is what's missing, because especially in a bull market, all you need is a narrative for crypto assets, right? That's why like we're kind of bubbly. In general, I feel like a lot of assets are going to go down because of that. But Handshake has the best narrative, right? Like, it has crazy narrative, like compared to all these other projects which have like 1 billion market cap or whatever. They're just like ideas that haven't really been in fruition, right? Yeah, so if we would have the ability to be on exchanges, and imagine if like we get on Ethereum exchanges, like hypothetically, like we would just get so much liquidity and the price action would skyrocket from there. But yeah, that's our challenge, but that's why, I guess that's what happens when you're an L1.
Yeah, no, nobody cares about you. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I was just on Twitter watching some other founders that have stepped away from projects. Like they're like arguing for the principles of their own projects, right? And I'm like, this guy created it, right? But like people take over either people take over or they don't care. Or you get shut out, and then it can happen from one day to another. You're like a overnight success, which we shall see if the price of Handshake goes up. I think what's interesting is that it's still like a very basic proof of work blockchain. You have some out there for sure, the Litecoins and the Bitcoin Cash and stuff like that, but it seems just like a nice little playful like blockchain. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw communities utilizing the token just for the economics, like simply the economics of it, just because it's like harmless and there's not much going on with it. So we shall see. Well, I don't know, Rob, those were some of the main things. Is there anything you wanted to cover before we end it? Any other horizon predictions? So, I mean, I know I hear you with the multi-million-dollar TL top level emojis. I'm hoping, and I think that I actually really don't think it's far-fetched considering what apes go for. But
I'm thinking, but another thing I mentioned prior, and I'll keep mentioning, is internationalized domain names. I think that's huge, and can become even bigger. I thought of some use cases, like especially in highly censored countries. For example, in, let's say, China, Bitcoin mining has like kind of been banned, right? If I'm not wrong. They've like, it's no one really mines there anymore. Like they've all moved to America because they're getting stomped down by the government. Like, for example, maybe like, let's say they would find the DNS, because I don't know if I'm wrong, but like in mining, right, you have like a pool and there's like a domain name that's connected to it, and that's how people find each other on the pool. As an example, imagine if we had like a Handshake name for that, right? And then they just can't take it down and they can all connect to each other. That's like one crazy use case. I think someone else in the community mentioned it. I didn't explain it very well because I don't know much about mining, but yeah, there's some form of use case there. The idea is like, it's an easy readable name that can't be censored, and everyone in the pool can access. And then just general usage in highly censored countries, maybe even like Russia. Like think about all the Russian names that are on Handshake. And the cool thing about it is they're TLDs that can just be used as websites. And it's not like DNS where there's not really a culture of IDNs on there. So mostly what you have is like, let's say Russian websites, but .com. And it's kind of weird to like write in Russian script and then go .com in an English script. Why can't you just go straight away in that one script and that's it, right? So I think that could be a really big use case as well.
Yeah, so plus it gets even worse. That like if you travel, there's like .com, .ar for Argentina for a lot of stuff, right? Or like .br for Brazil. So it starts to get like that. And it's also like I'm from the States, right? And like more or less a lot of the internet was born here. So the architecture of the internet was born here. And that happens a lot with like culture as well, but that's over. Like that era is now over. Hollywood is is dying, and as much as it might be close by for me, it's about time. Like when you travel, you get to experience all these other amazing cultures and like ideas, and you're just like I always come back like, wow, my perspective is, like I feel like so if that's the case, and the internet is the most expressive tool that humanity has gotten, like it needs to be more democratized. And I think that part of the reason that like people have a hard time thinking about the future with the concepts like Handshake is like we have trained ourselves like to think that we're already there, like we are in the future all the time. Like when I see a picture of something old, I'm like, that's so old. And I also think so dumb, because they weren't as smart as I am. Like they didn't have Google, right? Like they don't, like, so they must be dumb, right? And so we think we are so smart. It's hard for us to think into the future, but like we live on an internet today, which is like 90% English. Like that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Like, or more, right? When you have but if you look at the engineer per capita, I guarantee you it's 90% not like English speaking people, right? So the potential's freaking massive on that scale. The question is like, is it? Like we think it is, but it's also all been running on English, and .com for so long. So it's like,
yeah. I mentioned this problem of, all this anglicized internet that we have today, which is like, I'm not mad at it. It's just, it is what it is. Like, the Anglos like had the most influence in this world in this like century. But, I wrote this in my article, like there's some barriers to other countries because of that. For example, because like the .com is so sought after and things like that, and let's say all the country codes, they're in English script as well. It's just very frustrating for people because they have to, all the IDNs are on like those English character domains, right? And the thing is, I realized was in countries like Japan, I was talking to my friend, he said that people don't really search up websites. They just search up on Google and find websites from there. They never search up directly because none of the domains are actually in their script, right? And that's a very weird thing. I'm very used to, like, not all the time, but let's say I want to go on Uniswap. I don't search on Google and then click on it. I just go straight up, right? They don't do that. And that's because of this language barrier. Yeah. And a lot of, and like, for example, in China, they have to learn Pinyin, which is like a way to sound out English, a way to spell out Chinese words in English characters. So they use that in order to create domain names and things like that. So they don't use their own characters, they use Pinyin. It's just very weird and it's just annoying for them. Like, imagine if they just can surf the web like we do. Like, it'd just be easier. Yeah,
why would you put another like require a Google algorithm to navigate to a site? Like, I think that's great, but I'm old enough that I remember that feature getting implemented into URLs. It wasn't a thing. Like, it was just that Google became like the default homepage because everybody knew that you needed it, right? But it wasn't like you could just search and all of a sudden you were Googling, which is wild because you're putting, and so first I'm going through the Google algorithm, then I need to make sure a certificate authority says it's okay for me to get to this site, right? And then I get approval from that other person that's complying with ICANN. It just doesn't. Is it terrible? No, it works. A lot of things work. It doesn't mean that, but like it's also super impersonal, right? Which might not make sense if I'm, I don't know, submitting my passport or something. I don't know. Like it could be. So it's that's a good point. So hopefully that, and I don't see why it wouldn't. But then you have the, when it comes to like if you're trying to do like global reach, English will probably continue to hold its, despite the fact the architecture now will allow for more. It'll probably still be able to like hold its position just for the language purposes.
People have gotten kind of used to it, and it's not that big of a change where there'll be a crazy cultural shift, but it definitely has some good use cases.
I think it'll be big, and then it allows anybody with a TLD in their language if they care to, right? If that is expressive. But even a 0.0, a 0.5 HNS TLD that you buy allows you to have your own siloed like ecosystem, right? Again, outside of I think it'll just open it. It'll open it a lot. What somebody assumes owning a website will just mean a lot more. Right now, owning a website is a one-way street. Like I show you, right? And at best, you buy things from me that I will send to you, right? But by having this, it will be a much more, like I own not a place where things go back and forth, but I own like a community, a place where people like congregate. It'll be different.
Yeah.
Which will have.
Think about. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, go for it.
Okay, yeah. And think about like when TLDs will be used for wallets and personal identity use cases. Why would you want to have that in English? You can just have it in your own native tongue.
Yeah, and yes, also, and it's going to be wild. You'll be able to connect it to like universities. I don't know. I think my universities were always really good about because they have to like cycle so many students, right? They like tend to give them like a good identity and like put everything, your grades, your money, everything goes through like one thing. Like yeah, it's going to make a lot of sense, and then completely independent. I don't know, wild. I think about it all the time. I rarely find people in the real world that can that think about it frequently, but I think it's growing. I'm excited to see what HandyCon looks like how many people actually roll up this time after a year.
Yeah, it'll be exciting.
As always on the channel, this is not financial advice, but simply educational content that we hope that you enjoy. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe on this video. That way you can follow up on future videos where we cover more details in the decentralized web.